From Boca Raton, Florida, this is Behind the Bima. On this episode, Rabbi Goldberg navigates the intricate landscape of the 39th World Zionist Congress. Rabbi Goldberg is joined by five influential voices in the Jewish world. Rabbi Moshe Hauer, representing the OIC-Mizrachi Slate. Rabbi Pesach Lerner of Eretz, Rabbi Steve Burg from Aish Ha'am, Mort Klein of ZOA, and Dan Kaskel leading Herut. As the election for this global Congress unfolds, Rabbi Goldberg unpacks the implications of billions of dollars at stake, influencing policy and direction for the Jewish state and communities worldwide. The guests discuss their unique vision and agenda for their slates, aiming to direct the funds in ways that align with their core values and strategic goals. All this and more, Behind the Bima.
Good evening and welcome back to Behind the Bima, a special edition election coverage, the World Zionist Organization election. The World Zionist Organization was founded by Theodore Herzl 128 years ago, and the 39th election is taking place now. Voting has begun. If you're like me, you've gotten a bunch of emails, you've gotten a bunch of texts, you're being inundated by the different slates, the different organizations who are vying for your vote, and they're doing so not only to participate in a Congress and have a seat at a table, but they're doing so because there's more than $5 billion with a B dollars at stake every 5 years as elections take place, and money that comes in because Kakal owns a significant amount of land in Israel, and the tax that's paid whenever there's an exchange, a purchase of property, that money goes into an account coffers, and it totals more than $1 billion a year. So there are more than $5 billion at stake. Where will it go? How will it be invested? What policies will it support? What difference will it make? And the answer to that is determined by a body, by a group, much like the Knesset in Israel. 21 different slates, 21 organizations are vying for the 152 seats that are allocated to American Jewry, a significant increase over 15 slates that participated in the last election. Now there are 21 that are vying for the 152 seats. And whoever wins will serve alongside 173 representatives from Jewish communities along the rest of the diaspora and 200 representatives from Israel, chosen from Israel's political parties and according to the amount of seats that they have in parliament. So the Congress is made up of three groups: Israel, 200 representatives, the rest of the diaspora, 173, and American Jewry will determine 152 seats. And for many years, for most of these years, most of American Jewry was asleep at the wheel. They didn't know. They weren't involved. They weren't aware. They didn't register, and they didn't vote. But over the last couple of elections, that has changed because there is so much money at stake. And therefore, there are now 21 slates, U.S. Jews, that you could vote for in this World Zionist Congress election to determine who will win, which slate will have representatives, what coalition will be formed, and who ultimately will have enormous influence over policies and allocating these $5 billion. And so we did this special election episode in order to speak to the leaders of, for now, 5 of the slates. Maybe we'll continue and do a part 2 of it, but 5 of the slates. And I want to tell you why my thinking. I was reached out to by several of the slates to consider to be on their slate, several of the organizations to be on their slate, and to be a sort of nominee, depending on how many people would be voted, how far down the slate you'd actually have a seat at the table and be part of the Congress. And investigating, researching, looking into it, ultimately I came to the conclusion I'm not on any slate. I didn't agree. And that's not because this election isn't important to me. It's not because I don't care. And it's not because I don't believe in what any particular or many of these slates stand for. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If you know me, and if you know Boca Raton Synagogue, our shul, you know that we are enormous believers in diversity and unity. We recognize and we respect that there's not one answer. There's not one answer to how to be a Zionist. There's not one answer to how to love Israel. There's not one answer to how to influence Israel. To me, the most important thing about this election is don't sit back and watch. Don't be a spectator to our destiny. Don't complain and kvetch about policies or where money is going or what kinds of things are unfolding and happening when you could have had a say, when you could have had a stake, and you sat it out. Register. The only thing American Jewish adults can all vote. You know what the cost of entry is? Literally $5. To register is $5. To have a voice and a say in determining $5 billion costs $5. I'm not sure I know a return on an investment that is better than that. So what matters to me, and what I'm pushing and encouraging and urging strongly, is spend the $5, register and vote. Who you vote for, I hope you'll vote for one of the parties that we're sharing and featuring. I hope you'll vote for who's important and matters, to me, shares the same common ideas and values that I believe in, that we believe in. I think there's two parts to this election. One is keeping the money out of the wrong hands, because to be very clear, we love all Jews and we want to practice Jewish unity. But the reality is there are parties and there are slates in this election who fundamentally are against Torah values, what we believe in, who are trying to influence policies that go against what we think is best for the Jewish people and for Israel, religiously and politically. And we want to try to keep the money out of their hands. And the best way to do that is to have more people voting. And we want to put the money in the right hands. And what you decide is the right hands, I'll leave to you. Listen to these 5 conversations, listen to these 5 representatives. And there are others. We couldn't squeeze them all into this episode. I don't mean to say that if you're not included, then you're not worthy of our consideration. There are others as well. But those who are steeped in Torah, those who believe in our value system, those who, and this is my personal opinion, are right of center politically on Israel, on its safety and on its security and on its welfare and on the right of Jews to live in all the parts of Israel and in the future of Israel. So I'm not telling you which one. I'm not endorsing a specific party, and I don't appear on any slate. But I do want to encourage you as strongly as I can to spend the $5, register, and vote. Don't sit it out. Don't be a spectator. But listen to what they stand for, see which one speaks more to you, and all are different units in an army. As we've seen for the last year and a half, more than 500 days, our heroic soldiers are serving in different units, but they're united by an army with a common cause and a common mission. And the parties I'm bringing to you in this conversation, I believe, are different units, and I think that they overlap and coalesce. They complement each other in an army that has many of the same things in mind. And so maybe I have my own preference, and maybe you'll find out in these conversations which one I personally am voting for. But I'm not here to endorse or tell you what to do. I simply want to educate myself and educate others to learn more about why this matters, to register and to vote, to listen to different options, and to encourage the people around you. Let's absolutely flood the election to make our voice, the Torah community, the broad, diverse spectrum of the Torah community, to make our voices not only heard, but felt by being able to influence ultimately the election, the coalition of the seats, and to be able to determine where $5 billion will be spent for the future of our beloved Israel. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Hopefully you'll learn as much as I did from these conversations, and they'll help impact you in deciding who to vote for. It's a great honor to be joined by someone who's not only a dear friend and colleague, but really a mentor of mine for many, many years, Rabbi Hauer. I have learned and continue to learn so much from you for many years, and I'm deeply appreciative of that in general, and we'll have to have a longer, more elaborate conversation on so many things in your capacity as the executive vice president, leader of the OU, and mentor to so many like me. But today, I'm grateful that you're with us as a representative of the slate of the Orthodox Israel Coalition, representing this coalition of Mizrachi, OU, RCA, Young Israel, YU, Turo. I don't know if I left anybody out, but who are collectively coming together for this slate of the OIC. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And the feelings are very strongly mutual, both the warmth of friendship, and I learned from you along with the rest of Klal Yisrael. You are a remarkable voice, a remarkable leader, a remarkable example. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So let's dive right in. This World Zionist Congress, the election is upon us again. There's more than $1 billion at stake that will have a real meaningful influence. As I've entered this, it almost feels like the Jewish people are in some kind of a color war where the prize is $1 billion. And there's teams and logos and sides, and people are rallying the troops to get involved, and we want a so-called win. Although if we work together, then we're all winning. But there's a lot at stake, and people sit around and they have a lot of opinions about policies and about institutions and organizations and the direction of where this money goes. And we're talking real money, an enormously significant amount of money. So the Orthodox Israel Coalition, how did these organizations come together to serve on one slate? They have a lot in common, but there's also differences between them. And I don't know that there's another area where there is such a explicit partnership in working together. What brought all the members of this coalition to be working together under one slate?
The history of this coalition really goes back way before the formal coalition of the OIC. Before that existed, even under different names. The history, I believe, really goes back to when the Netziv of Volozhin joined Rabbi Leon Pinsker in the leadership of the Chovevei Tzion. And the idea was, Leon Pinsker was a secular Jew We would call that loosely, excuse me if it's any kind of a mischaracterization. And the Netziv was the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin, the Avi HaYeshivos, the father of the yeshivos. The Netziv felt, and he wrote this in a famous tshuva, not referencing this specific activity, that when it comes to those issues which are necessary for maintaining the body of the Jewish people, we must work together. And really that was the foundation for what happened later with the religious Zionist movement being at the table of the Zionist movement. And the matara, the goal of that was to positively influence and shape, to bring towards Torah values and Talmud Torah a group of people who at times were neutral and at times were oppositional to that idea. But they were there as Jews building something for the body of the Jewish people, and we can't abdicate. We have to be there in order to be able to provide something for the soul of the Jewish people going forward. That's the foundation. Rav Kook, although one cannot connect all dots between the Netziv and Rav Kook, the Rav Kook was a student of the Netziv, and Rav Kook is perhaps the image of religious Zionism in that sense, and that was his goal. He was uneasy about so many things. If you read his letters about things around what was happening in the Zionist movement, there was much which was really oppositional to Torah and mitzvahs and Torah values, but he doubled down. Sometimes he bit his tongue, and he also then let his tongue wax eloquent to be able to influence and uplift the movement and shape it. And it's a long process which requires a ton of patience. And sometimes you could sit at that table and just say, okay, we're just here to be the religious voice at the table, and we're going to smile and let things go. And that is an obstacle or a failure which happens at times. But fundamentally, the mission is to be at that table, to be influential in a way which is firm and pleasant, which is Drachei Darchei Noam, which is She'eshem Shamayim Yitahev Al Yadecha, to be able to enhance and to uplift. A lot of that has happened. There has been a remarkable transition in the religious relationship with the general state over the years. I'm sure, Rav Efrem, that you have, like me, visited yeshuvim, which once upon a time did not allow a Beit Knesset, did not even allow a bris to take place, except maybe at the outer house of the yeshuv with a doctor coming in. And now they have a shul, and they haven't all been transformed into religious Jews, but the relationship and the respect and the value, and that's part of the religious Zionist project. And I think that the coalition that we have here, which is a beautiful coalition, it is. You're right. It's unfortunately rare that we're able to do such a thing like that formally. Is a group of people and organizations that have been committed to that vision.
So, what are some of the policies that the OIC, the more that their slate is voted for, the more they have elected, the more representatives that they have in the Congress making decisions about the money? Where would they like to see that influence? What are their policies? Are there programs? Are there institutions? Are there directions? Essentially, what is the platform of the OIC when people are choosing? First of all, hopefully they're making the choice to register and vote. That's the most important thing. Don't be a passive spectator to the destiny of the Jewish people. Don't be complacent. Don't have complaints and sit it out. Everybody needs to register and vote. And the OIC, for me, I connect incredibly with. These are my rebbeim, and including you, my mentors, and I certainly endorse and support and would encourage the OIC. I relate so much to its leadership. My Rebbe, Mori Rabbi Rav Shechter, is one of the people on the slate, coming as Rosh Yeshiva of YU. So certainly I personally feel incredibly connected and comfortable. But to educate people, as opposed to some of the other slates that also might identify as representative of the Orthodox community or representative of more right-wing politics, and not extreme right, but right of center politics on Israel, how does the OIE stand out? Why should people vote for it?
Okay, so I want to try to clarify. One of the difficult things about an election campaign, as you know, conducted by a lot of, so to speak, campaign ads, is that it's very hard to be clear. You have to have a lot of spectacular numbers and red ink and declare crisis and world changing and billions of dollars and everything else. So if I can, in the comfort of this conversation, I would perhaps make 4 categories. Category number 1 has nothing to do with money. It has to do with the fact that these are tables and places where Jews are sitting around together, trying to think about things, trying to build something. It's not really a hard power institution in the sense no decisions will be made here that are going to be binding about the Kotel, about the draft law, about LGBTQ or anything else. It's not government. It's not government. They run programs. They fund programs. So, but they do express opinions. There's some way of reflecting, so to speak, dat hakahal. What does world Jewry think? And being at that table just to shape and to influence and to be part of that discussion is in itself important, valuable, impactful, even if there wasn't a dollar in place. That's number one. Number two, in terms of the dollars. So $1 billion are not in place to assign to yeshivos and seminaries and mikvos or things like that. That's not the case. There is more than $1 billion, and by the way, Rabbi Goldberg, that's annually, which means like this election is about well more than $1 billion, maybe $7 billion, who knows. However, $1 billion includes the kakal monies, which are about building infrastructure, fundamentally, mostly about building infrastructure, rebuilding the communities of the Gaza envelope. That's not part of, so to speak, like what we can use for this, for that, or for the other. The Jewish agency monies are used and are given to a significant degree to impact Aliyah and to fund efforts of Aliyah and to save Jews from this place or that place that are in trouble. And a lot of that work is inspiring. It's there. It's not per se like part of some kind of pot that we're going to be able to use or to redirect. Nevertheless, of course, those things will still be important when you're helping Jewish communities and when you're bringing people to Israel. There are a lot of issues which impact Judaism. The complicated, deeply sensitive issues about Jewish identity and so on and so forth. So it's not like they're issues which don't concern us, but they're not dollar issues per se. They are, again, more policy issues. A step down from that, so to speak, in terms of immediate impact on my pocketbook and yours, are issues which can shape the Jewish communities in a certain sense. Again, shape may be overstated. But for example, one of the core projects, which I'm sure you are familiar with and have seen many times, are shlichim. Shlichim come from Israel, agents, emissaries of the Israeli government, of the World Zionist Organization, of various organizations within it, Torah Mitzion, places like that, who come, people from Israel who come for a couple of years, a few years, whether they're coming to a day school, whether they're coming to a community kollel, whether they're coming to a university campus, and they're sent. What's their mission? So again, you might have encountered in your community fine religious people who clearly part of their mission is not just Ahavat Eretz Yisrael, but also Torah and Judaism. Many of the shluchim don't necessarily have that as part of their mission. It's about Israel and Zionism, which is very, very important and very, very valuable. But our involvement is able, in a certain sense, to help broaden the mandate to include Yiddishkeit, to include Judaism, to help steer and guide more people with a strong religious orientation to be representing. And that's not something which might affect you and me or your community and my community immediately, but it's part of our achrayus, it's part of our responsibility for the Jewish world. Last but not least, there is a bucket, of course, of being able to actually bring funds to things which will affect directly. So for example, OIC-Mizrachi was instrumental in being able to maintain masa scholarships for yeshivos and for many yeshivos and seminaries. They were cut, they were at risk, they worked hard to rebuild it. That brings real scholarship money to people. We have on our agenda to bring more support for that. We would like to see things like, hopefully, again, we don't put it in advertisements, but what's the greatest feeder of Aliyah is the year in Israel. You get a free flight to Israel when you make Aliyah. Should you get some subsidy towards your year in Israel? Should you get some subsidy towards your summer program in Israel, which so feed the Avat Haaretz of our people? And it's part of the mission of Kakal funds, of Jewish agency, to spur and to stimulate love of Israel. So those are there have been a lot of accomplishments in those areas, and there's a lot of work to be done in those areas.
Yeah, those are all certainly very important. I think we'd all rally around them, and it'd be amazing to make progress in them. I want to ask you, I don't think it's an uncomfortable question, because I think it's really important for me personally and others who are listening to hear specifically from you, because Rabbi Hauer, I've always admired how you are comfortable in multiple communities in the Torah world, part of the yeshiva world, and part of a greater Torah world with its diversity in it. And yet this World Zionist Congress, this election, the different parties in it, is not spread widely. If somehow we could wake up the communities of Lakewood, Monsey, Passaic, Brooklyn, I think the numbers there alone could sway this election and the money and its direction and its use in enormous ways. But the yeshiva world, I use that term however you want to take it, more broadly, has not embraced or is not really involved in, maybe even is pushing people away or discouraging them from participating. How do you make sense of that, being a member of a total Torah world and seeing a segment of the Torah world, of the yeshiva world, not participating? Does that give you pause? Does it not? Are you frustrated and you wish you could have more influence? How does that play into your role in the OIC?
It's an age-old argument, and it's an argument upon which, again, the way everybody expresses themselves about this may not be included in Elu Ve'elu Divrei Elokim Chaim, but the fundamentals of the argument are old and long-standing, and that is what I described before as the Netziv's approach. When the Netziv wrote that Shuvah, he was responding to a journal called Machzikei Hadas, which had its roots in the Chassam Sofer and in bells, and in those who in principle would not sit at this kind of a Jewish table and hope for influence. They would feel that sitting at the table would in itself be a compromise of what they stand for. And therefore, you hear many voices today from the Haredi community, from the Hasidic community, saying you can't touch this. If Eretz HaKodesh is trying to include the Haredi community in it, there are many voices within the Haredi community who are pushing back and saying that goes against our tradition. Eretz HaKodesh has stepped in. They have certainly been impactful in meaningful ways. But there again, here's the difference. In other words, if we want to speak straightforwardly about the difference, again, we're on the same team. We all want good things. Our fundamental mission there is colored by Sheyeh Shem Shamayim Yisrael Al Yadecha. We want to make Torah, Judaism, and Orthodoxy beloved to everybody around that table. The general approach of even those who sat at the table, who've joined the table, whether in the Knesset or in this, has been less focused on that and more on securing and protecting the things that we hold dear, and not so much trying to shape attitudes. And so the messaging around this campaign is different in that way, and the goals around the campaign is different, and the way we both sit at that table is therefore different, and we push forward in this direction. I just want to if I can, to wrap up,
please,
with circling back to something you mentioned at the difference, the uniqueness of the coalition. The Orthodox Union, we've been very involved at this table as part of the Mizrachi Coalition, and many times over the past few years we have been approached and encouraged from different forces. Why don't you create your own slate? Why don't you create your own slate? Why don't you create your own slate? And we made a very specific choice, and the choice was that it is a unique and it is a beautiful coalition that has maintained itself for a long time. A lot of the Orthodox community, not all, but a lot of the Orthodox community standing together. And whatever we might have stood to gain by separating, we would have given up, and we would have created a further fractiousness within the community. Why should someone in Boca or someone in Teaneck or someone in the Five Towns, someone who voted in the last World Zionist Congress, why should they look and say, should we vote for this one or should we vote for that one? Let them see us still together. And we don't want people to make choices when we have people, which of course we're different. We're not the same as any of our partners, but we are together on this, and so much more. I know it sounds trite. So much more unites us than divides us. Like how we say that all the time, but it actually is true.
Right.
And in a time when there's so much argument in the Jewish people, we did not want to add even one drop to that. So we hope, Be'ezus Hashem, that everybody will vote. Whether they vote for the OIC, we would love that they would vote for the OIC to strengthen our voice and our presence there and our goals. But I know that your goal, Rabbi Goldberg, is that everybody should be engaged, and we share that goal.
And also to echo what you said, which is an army is made up of different units, and we have different slates who are aligned in a coalition. And the goal here is everyone should vote. And maybe there's a slight difference or a different slate or group within it, but the key is to, so to say, keep the resources out of the wrong hands. And I don't mean that to divide Klal Yisrael, but just in terms of our agenda and interests, to keep it in the right hands that are mostly overlapping and aligned, even if there are differences between them. So whichever slate you vote for, register and vote. Rabbi Hauer, thank you for joining us for this conversation. Thank you for all you do for Klal Yisrael on a regular basis. We are so, so grateful for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
We are grateful to be joined by Rabbi Pesach Lerner, the chairman of Eretz HaKodesh. We've known Rabbi Lerner for many years and worked together through Young Israel and more recently the tremendous work of Eretz HaKodesh I benefited from during Corona and otherwise, being able to visit Israel and our students be able to get into Israel. But now we're focused a lot more to talk about in that area, but we're here to talk about the World Zionist Congress, this election, the billions of dollars that are at stake, not only 1 year, but each of these years, and therefore why people's votes matter. So Rabbi Lerner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Rabbi Lerner, tell us about Eretz HaKodesh. I'll jump right into it with, I don't think it's controversial because we are friends and we are working together, and please God, a big coalition on the bigger Congress as a whole, but there is an Orthodox Israel coalition. Eretz HaKodesh is separate and apart from it. Why do we need multiple Orthodox slates and groups? Couldn't there be one Orthodox group, be at the table, and be able to get all the Orthodox community across the spectrum to vote for it, direct the money and the policies in one direction? Why do we need multiple Orthodox groups?
Okay, Rabbi, you asked the question, so let's backtrack a little bit. Eretz HaKodesh began 5-6 years ago. Gentleman, let's say his name, Yaakov Chaguel, who today is the chairman of the World Zionist Organization, a Shomer Shabbos member of Likud, came to America and he met with a group of us. There were 4 people at the meeting: myself, an Agudas Yisrael activist, an activist in the Hasidic community, an activist in the Lubavitch community. And telling us what was going on in the World Zionist Congress, what they were doing. More important, what the liberal movements and the reform movements were doing, taking advantage of this situation. And for various reasons, the other 3 members backed off. And I said, it sounds like something we should need to do. And I did it. I went and asked various Gedolei Yisrael in America. And for the moment, I will leave their names out, not because they're embarrassed, but because unfortunately, they're being pressured to change their mind, to come out against, and they've asked me not to go public with it. Everybody listening to this knows who they are, but I won't go public. They guided me. One of them introduced me to my colleague and dear friend, Reb Nechemia Malinowitz. I went to Eretz Yisrael, and we went into Reb Chaim Kanievsky and Reb Gershon Edelstein Zichron Livrocha. And they were already advised and prepped. And when we walked in and they asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky, should they join the Histadrut HaTzionut Olamit to limit the koach of the reform, I almost fell off my chair. You want to ask Reb Chaim a question, you hint, but to ask him directly, the World Zionist Organization, he responded, yes. And that response and that direction was continuous till the end of his life. We were by him, he paskin Nashailas, he directed. Gershon Edelstein was for us. And then many, many others. But I must say, Rabbi, Rabbi Usher Weiss, Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz are involved. We have videos with them. But this is the first question everybody asks, or everybody stated. This is normally not something the Haredi community gets involved with. Okay? Nothing we get involved with. Okay? The Zionism is not there. And the difference was that this is not a typical situation. This is where the liberal movements, the reform movements, are using their power and authority and influence to harm Klal Yisrael. They are using their money to take Klal Yisrael, the Haredi community, the Torah community. It's bigger than Haredi. It's the Torah community to the world, to the Israeli Supreme Court. There are dozens of cases that the reform movement and their representatives took the Torah world to Supreme Court, and there were major negative consequences from that.
Could you give some examples?
A second. Okay, let's go from the light to the Kal Chomer. There's something in Israel called the kosher phone. Okay, if you walk into Hebron, Panovich, they want to know what your cell phone number is, because certain prefixes are a kosher phone, which means you cannot access the internet and some other stuff. Okay, well, the reform movement went to Supreme Court and said the kosher phone is racist. What do you mean? And I apologize, Rabbi, to your listeners, because you cannot call the gay hotline from a kosher phone. And the end of the result was the Supreme Court forbade and said a kosher phone is illegal. It took 2.5 years, a change in the law and change in the government to change that rule. In Afula, they wanted a separate seating concert from community in Afula. The mayor said, wonderful. They announced it. The reform movement went to court. You can't have separate seating. It's racist. The lower court sided with the reform movement. The mayor went to the appellate court, and the appellate court sided with the mayor. The reform movement went back to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said the concert is illegal. The mayor said, I'm sorry. The Supreme Court decision came down Tuesday at 6 o'clock. The concert started at 7. The mayor said, I'm sorry. Why anybody is bothered to bother us to have separate seating? But let's go a little more difficult. The law used to be that if a family, a two-parent working family, doesn't make enough money and they're under a certain financial threshold, they're entitled to benefits. For lack of comparison, they're entitled to food stamps, they're entitled to welfare payments, they're entitled to daycare, etc. The reform movement went to court and said, it says two parents are working. Only one parent is working. I don't know what he's doing. And the Supreme Court cut those benefits. That's thousands of shekel to thousands of families, affecting thousands of babies. Okay, this past summer, they went to Supreme Court and they held off funding for daycare and summer camps for Torah communities. Okay, it takes much time to change the law, to fight the case. Every time we researched, the people who are bringing these cases, the money is from the reform movement.
So could
And
you,
the money of the reform
I
movement.
just want to bring it back to the Congress. I understand what you're saying, and these are all examples where.
So let's one
Eric
second.
Kodesh
Okay,
stood up.
so our response was the only allowance that we were given was you have to fight the left. And we are the only party in the Congress that is fighting the left. There are
So
a
that
lot
was
of
the
good other
question.
parties.
I just want to clarify. So there are other Orthodox parties, and they're standing for advocating Torah principles, but Eretz HaKodesh's mandate is specifically in this direction to combat or to
Try to limit the influence of the left. Everybody else can be doing nice things, and they are. But the point is, though, that doing nice things without stopping the left still hurts the Torah community. Okay, and
So-
we're the only ones. I must be honest,
So-
we're the only ones. I can give you more examples. Okay, the Kakal Ken Kayemis JNF has not spent a nickel or a shekel over the Green Line in Judea and Samaria for years because we don't have the majority in the Kakal Directorate. Only until Eretz HaKodesh got involved did we start pushing that money should go over the Green Line. The other parties have not done that. We finally got small amounts, but we're beginning to get amounts for educational programs, for social programs over the Green Line that hasn't been done before. So again, other parties are doing wonderful things, but if we don't challenge the status quo, okay, then the Judea and Samaria is being hurt, So our community is being hurt. Children are being hurt. But Rabbi, let me suggest for a second. Your
Yes.
audience probably has no idea where this money is coming from. If you ask somebody, where's the money come from? Oh, donations and blue and white boxes. It's completely wrong. If anybody buys a house in the United States of America, and probably other countries, when you bought the house, there's a purchase tax added on to your first bill. 10%, 9% of the property value, you pay a purchase tax to the government. The same thing is true in Israel. Kakal, Jewish National Fund Israel, owns about 20% of Israel. And they made a deal with the government that whenever you sell a piece of land or apartment or a house, whatever the case may be, we get 20% of that purchase tax. In 2023, Kakal, Karen Kayemer, JNF Israel earned 9 billion shekel. Let's round it off, give or take $3 billion. That's where their money comes from, not donations. And that money is being given to, we documented that the Reform and Conservative each get 50 million shekel a year for their purposes. You can do a lot of good with 50 million shekel, but you can do a lot of bad. And our mandate from Gedolah Yisrael on both sides of the Atlantic, okay, or in Europe, was saying Sur Meira V'asei Tov. And I must suggest that we are the only organization mandated for that. And we are the only organization doing that. A lot of other organizations do good things and wonderful. But the bottom line is, if they don't, if nobody stops the status, challenges the status quo, then the people of Yehuda v'Shomron will be suffering because they don't get the funding and the building they need. And the Orthodox community, and by the way, we became known as the activists, as you said, Rabbi, during COVID, because of our efforts. 35,000 students in seminary and yeshiva, all students in all seminaries, got into Eretz Yisrael. 35,000 visas were issued through our offices and our fingerprints. We've opened up Kakao opened up a division for kids off the derech. I don't mean off the derech, they didn't make it for Shachris this morning. I mean 12 to 19-year-olds that haven't made it to Shachris in years, haven't fasted on Yom Kippur, forget about Shabbos and forget about Kashrus. And we've taken them, we had Kakao with our input, has taken them off the streets, put them to work, shepherding sheep, teaching them, training them. And these kids are beginning to go back to life. They go home, they finally go back to their families. They finish up their high school. And they get to the army.
So let me ask you. So what would you say to someone who says, you know, in Israel, in the Knesset in general, the Haredim, and I don't want to get into that. I'm not raising this because I want to get into that. But, you know, Haredim participate to the degree it benefits them. So they're not necessarily contributing an equal share, but they will participate so they can direct money and policies in the way that benefit them. Is this just a world example of that? Are we expanding that from in Israel? What would you say to the person who says Eretz HaKodesh was basically a way for Haredim to get in on the action of these billions of dollars to direct it in ways that will benefit their community?
Okay, so I repeat, number one, we didn't go in for the money. If it was only money, I would not have gotten allowance to get in. That's not what the Haredi community does. That's according to the post scheme that I deal with and you deal with. That was not. But Vasher Weiss said money can't go in. Fighting the left, that's the mission, number one. So number one, we went into put the system back on track, number one. Number two, I think we're contributing. We're trying to challenge and tell these people, do what you're supposed to do. We're involved in Aliyah. I'm involved in Aliyah constantly. Aliyah has not been successful, the Jewish age, but I deal with Aliyah. I don't care who it is. Somebody asked me, would you help a non-Orthodox Jew make Aliyah? And my answer is probably before I help an Orthodox Jew. Why? An Orthodox Jew doesn't get it to Israel, they'll marry an Orthodox Jew. But a non-Orthodox Jew stays in America, I don't know if they're going to marry a Jew. And if I can get them to Israel, they'll marry a Jew. So that's wonderful. So we're not in it only for ourselves. We're in it to stop, to make the system stop hurting people, number one. And number two, I was just recently at the Jewish Agency Board of Governors. We participated. We're there. We're not just for ourselves. We're there to help everybody. But helping everybody has to be. Now again, the system has to be challenged. This is not the time and place to talk about the programs that are under the Jewish Agency, Kakao, WZO, that are detrimental not only to Haredim or Jews or Orthodox Jews. I believe there are programs going on that are contrary to what you and I would call the best interest of Israel, Judea and Samaria.
Understood.
Okay,
So
helping out others.
The Orthodox Israel Coalition, they're for example, I don't think there's anyone who falls under the umbrella of the OU, Young Israel, Turo, RCA. I hope I didn't leave anyone out, who would disagree with their platform or the importance. Their struggle will just be, how do we get people to actually take the time, make the effort, click the link, pay the few dollars, sign up and vote. I think that's their friction. That's their challenge. You have a much bigger friction. Eretz HaKodesh has a bigger friction, which is a segment of the Orthodox world who, as you said at the beginning, there's some battle and disagreement over whether one should even be participating in this. And you saw just in the last 24 hours, just as this election opened up, there's already like an explosion of it. My Gadol said this, my Gadol said that. Do it, don't do it. Rabbi Lerner quotes this one. Why don't they use their name? They use their name. They don't use their name. So why is it controversial in the greater Torah world, yeshiva world, if it's so clear and it has the mandate of these Gedolei Yisrael? Does it remain controversial today? I mean, you and I have discussed this offline, but if we just from a population size got Monsey, Passaic, Lakewood, Brooklyn, just their populations to register and vote, you could sway the
Don't
whole
forget
election.
Florida, Rabbi. Don't forget Florida.
Florida's a given. That's why I didn't even have to mention it. But those numbers of those communities, if they voted, could sway a whole election. So yet there's friction.
There's always a faction that holds that Zionism is unacceptable. Anything connected with the Z is unacceptable. And those people are entitled to their opinion. They're Gedolei Yisrael, but there's another set of opinions. There are those people who hold it's forbidden to vote in the Israeli Knesset election. On the other hand, most Rosh Yeshivas and most Hasidic Rebbes in Eretz Israel not only vote, they campaign. So there's an opinion. And I don't challenge that. They're entitled to their opinion. But the bottom line is we have many Gedolim who have told us. Let me tell you a story. And I have permission to repeat the story. Okay? The Rav probably knows the name Rav Yosef Efrati.
Sure.
Rav Yosef Efrati was the right-hand man, a right-hand Talmud or whatever of Rabbi Yosef Zatzal. I know Rabbi Efrati for decades. Okay? An American Rosh Yeshiva went to Rabbi Efrati and said that I know, said the American Rosh Yeshiva, and I heard this from Efrati on numerous occasions. Rabbi Efrati responded, interesting. I know Pesach Lerner for many years and I trust him, but I don't listen to anything secondhand. I might.
Okay. So you were saying.
Let me share with you. Let me share with you a story. Rav Efrati, who I'll discuss, says it's true. And I've heard the story on numerous occasions from Rabbi Efrati. Number one is an American Rosh Yeshiva went to Rabbi Efrati and told him that the American Rosh Yeshiva, knows that Reb Chaim was against Eretz HaKodesh. Rabbi Efrati responded that Rabbi Efrati, knows Pesach Lerner for decades. He trusts me, but he doesn't listen to anything secondhand. So Rabbi Efrati said, and we know Reb Chaim answers and said, I asked Reb Chaim about Eretz HaKodesh. Reb Chaim answered him, yes, I told him to open up. I told him to do it. Rabbi Efrati then asked Reb Chaim, what about the Shver, Rabbi Yoshiv? Rabbi Yoshiv was not into these things. And Reb Chaim responded, different situations and different challenges require different answers. What the Reform are doing to the Torah community today requires a challenge, and therefore I told him to go in. Now that response, well, that is what everybody had told us on all sides of the Atlantic. Okay, whether it's from England, Eretz Israel, or America. And that's what makes us unique. I'm not saying special, unique. We went in to challenge. And when we got into the system and we learned the more, okay, I met with governors and mayors of cities in Judea and Samaria. And I asked them, how come you guys are not getting anything? It says nobody's there fighting for us. It's ironic that, quote unquote, the Haredi individual, the Haredi party, is fighting for Yehuda v'Shomron because there are a lot of, let's be honest, there's a lot of communities in Yehuda v'Shomron. Haredi, non-Haredi, doesn't make a difference. It's part of Eretz Yisrael. And as part of Eretz Yisrael, they should be benefiting from Keren Kayem Yisrael, whose mission is to buy and service and build up Eretz Yisrael. Aliyah. Aliyah is wonderful for everybody. Okay, moving to Eretz Yisrael. And there were very few people who were fighting in the system and helping people out. Nefesh B'Nefesh does wonderful work, don't get me wrong. But after Nefesh B'Nefesh, it goes back to the Jewish Agency. And the Jewish Agency is a bureaucracy. And Baruch Hashem, when I write to them, I help them, they respond to me, they cooperate to me. So I've been able to get a lot of families into Eretz Yisrael that were still busy with the process. Okay, Shemitah. Shemitah, the last Shemitah cycle, Shemitah in Kakao, which owns tens of thousands of dunams, was always under the Heter Mechira. Now, I'm not speaking bad about the Heter Mechira. I personally had a conversation 50 years ago, probably 50 years ago, with the Shlomo Zalman Auerbach at the Heter Mechira, and his answer to me was, Mistamer is good. So I'm not challenging the Heter Mechira. But it's not accepted in a lot of areas, and you don't know who's watching over it in Kakao. The Shemitah Bizman Hazeh, the last Shemitah cycle, was under the auspices of Rav Yosef Efrati, the biggest gadol in Mitzvah Hatliyos Ba'oretz and Eretz Yisrael, and all the kruvim and all the zaitim, all the kerubs and all the olives were Otzer Bezdin. It's an advantage, something we can do. If we're at the table, we can affect the table in a positive senses.
So I want to
our
remember
job is to
Eretz Kodesh is doing wonderful work, and we're very, very grateful for your leadership and their wonderful work. And each of these conversations I've sort of ended and wrapped up the same way, which is, just like the Army, which we've unfortunately come to know well the last year and a half, the heroic soldiers, precious soldiers whom we daven for each and every day, just like the Army has different units, and you need the different units. And some are more aggressive, some are less aggressive, some are protective, and some are assertive. And you need the units because they're all fighting for the same cause, that there is a coalition within this election. And I don't want to get in trouble by leaving anyone out, but certainly it's the Orthodox Israel coalition, it's Eretz HaKodesh, maybe Aish, maybe this, maybe that. Again, I don't want to get in trouble. Certainly there are those who share similar Torah values and those who share similar political values, of which there could be a coalition, commonality, and working together. And then there are different units that break out to do their own work in their other ways. And we hope that the people listening, whether it's meaningful for them to support and vote for Eretz HaKodesh, or for the Orthodox Israel Coalition, or one of the other groups we're interviewing, or one of the other groups that have the shared values, the key is to get in the game. Don't be passive and a spectator. Don't complain when you see policies and money being spent on things that undermine, compromise, or corrupt what we care about. There's an opportunity for everybody to register and vote. And whichever unit you're voting for, vote in the coalition of the Army that will advance the interests of Torah Jewry.
Rabbi, I don't know who else you're interviewing, but let me comment that we work together with Shas. So if you have Sfardim in the community, and one of the new parties coming out is Am Yisrael Chai, which is a college campus coordinated by B'nai Torah. So hopefully, my goal is to work for the people on the right, center right, and my goal is that center right takes this Congress by storm and we win, and then we'll go into a back room and we'll argue out who gets what. But at the end of the day, the hope would be that in totality, the center right will control and put things where they're supposed to be, and hopefully we can have a big kiddush and give it Seischem L'Sholem to the center left.
Okay, on that note, so Rabbi Lerner, thank you for joining us and sharing, and Yasher Koach on the great work of Eretz HaKodesh, and it should succeed, hopefully, in not only having to combat a left, but the Sur Meirah, but be able to focus all of its energies in Mirz Hashem on the Asay Tov. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
Rabbi Steve Burg. Rabbi Burg, my dear friend for many, many, many years. We've worked together on so many projects and ideas, and we got to do a whole separate conversation because what you're doing at Aish is just outrageous. It's impacting the world, millions. It's not an exaggeration. Online, offline. It's an incredible thing, really, to see, and it deserves its own very worthy conversation. But for today, we're here to talk about Aish Ha'am, and Aish HaTorah throwing its hat in the ring in the World Zionist Congress in this election, offering a slate and getting involved in the direction of billions of dollars. I've been describing this as like a huge Jewish color war, with the first prize being like billions of dollars at stake, which is in some ways what it feels like. Obviously much more serious than that. So talk to us about why. What did you see that said, Aish needs its own party. We need to be part of this election. We need to fight with our own seats and our own slate. Why not join one of the other existing groups? There are Orthodox groups out there. Why not join one of them?
First of all, thank you so much. It's we've been friends for many, many years. It's a pleasure to be here with you. For us, it's not really about I know everyone's throwing around billions of dollars and all the different terms. It's not really about that for us, and it's not even about the fights amongst the denominations. I'll kind of leave that to other people. For us, it's really been about empowering young people. I have been involved with the World Zionist Organization (WZO) now for 5 years. Very, very close friend of mine, Yaakov Chagoel, is a chairman. Came to visit me about 5-6 years ago, said, you got to get involved. And I've been involved. And one of the things I've seen, I'm a board member of Jewish Agency, involved on all levels. And one of the things I've seen is just there's a certain staleness to the Jewish community, where it's kind of like the same way it's been for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I think that we need an influx of young people, of people that have dreams, have hopes, have different ideas of what could happen. And that's, I think, been our goal. I think we have the youngest slate in the entire election. We went with basically, I would say, every university student suing their university. We have, Aiden Yadiger from Columbia, Shabbos Kesem from Harvard, who went to Aish for 3 years, a number of other students. We have a tremendous amount of influencers who are involved on very, very high levels with massive populations out there. And I was recently at the Jewish Agency board meetings, and everyone was coming up to me saying, well, how much did you pay your influencers? And I said, zero.
Right.
They want to work for the Jewish people. And so we put them on our list. So for us, it's been about creating something that I don't think has existed before. And I think something that the Jewish people needs, that kind of energy.
I love that answer because, I've been having this conversation and we're putting this together to try to educate myself and others as they're seeing a lot going on about this election and want to understand it better. And what you're describing is it's not only about what you stand for, which we'll get to in a moment, but it's about who you're reaching. And I love the perspective that says we're not at each other's throats. We're not competing. What we're actually trying to do is collaborate to reach as many people as possible, because Aish on college campus and with its influences is going to reach a whole other population than rabbis in their shuls, or then some of the other groups that are dealing with different demographics. And that notion that says we are in many ways aligned, we have so much in common, there's a coalition that we can form together. Now let's break up because we can each specialize and focus on a group that we can reach to get in, because it's all about registering and voting. If you don't register and vote, then you don't have influence, you don't have seats, you can't be part of a coalition. So there's no question that Aish Ha'am and the people that you mentioned and the influencers that already are part of Aish, either professionally or voluntarily, that Aish promotes their beautiful light, that you're reaching more people. So when you reach those people through those influencers and through those college students and college leaders, and you get them to vote, and let's say Aish Ha'am has tremendous success and the slate gets voted in, what does Aish Ha'am stand for? What do you want to see happen? Are there policies? Is there direction of some of these dollars? What do you want to see different with the influence that you'll have if that slate wins?
Yes, one of my I have a couple different areas that I'm going to advocate for, and I intend to advocate for. And one of the big ones is social media. Aish does 1 million video views a day on social media. We're very, very active. We're probably the largest in the Jewish community. And I think the overall Jewish community is just totally missing this point. And this is, again, like I said, I come to these meetings and most people there just have no clue what social media is. And even the Israeli government, we do a lot of work with the Israeli government. Right after October 7th, we went to meet with the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. And even till now, Israel is struggling with social media. They're struggling with getting their story out there. They're struggling with how to tell it. So as far as I'm concerned, one of the things that we will be doing is trying to get dollars allocated towards influencers. I want to bring more influencers to Israel because, quite frankly, I could talk to them blue in the face. But if I get an influencer who's got a couple of million followers out there to say something, it kind of blows up. And we have seen so many beautiful stories of people that were totally unconnected Jewish people on October 6th. October 7th happens. They're looking at a different world. And some of these influencers, really at the risk of their careers, because they lost followers, they lost sponsors, they lost all types of things, start fighting for the Jewish people. And, we have been engaging them, and we've been saying, okay, you've been fighting for Israel. Let's add a little Jewish wisdom in there. Let's add some more things in there. And you could be a powerhouse. And so I'm so proud of those folks. So I want to get dollars to bring them over to Israel, dollars to help them on their mission. And the flip side also is, and this is something, we both know Malcolm Hoenlein, who I think is one of the treasures of the Jewish people. He said something to me that was so powerful so many years ago. He said that basically he had come out of the struggle for Soviet Jewry rallies and all the different things that happened in the 70s and the 80s. So much of the Jewish leadership came out of that. So much of our future leadership is going to come out of October 7th. And so I would say we have, like I mentioned before, pretty much every university student suing their university is on the Aish Ha'am slate. And what I want to do is I want to run Shabbatons. I want to run trips. I want to take these Jewish leaders who have fought back. They weren't just going to take it. They fought back. They put their universities in the spotlight. They've done a tremendous job. I want to support these young Jews. Right. I want to support them in what they're doing, whether we have Shabbatons, trips to Israel, bring them to Knesset. The overall, this Jewish leadership that you and I both know so well that has existed, that's having trouble kind of moving forward into the next century. We got to push them. And these kids are the way to do it. These young people are the way to do it.
I love that approach and that attitude. The cynic listening might say, well, Rabbi Burg started Aish Ha'am because Aish is in it for themselves, and this other slate, they're in it for themselves, and they're Charedim, they're in it for them, and each one is in it for themselves. And what I'm hearing a little bit is that the answer is, first of all, yes, but that's okay because each person is in it for Klal Yisrael, just bringing what they bring to Klal Yisrael, right? If the slate wins, Rabbi Burg doesn't, build an addition on his house. If another slate wins, that person's not going on vacation with their family. They're trying to win to be able to, because they believe that they have a platform and a direction to be able to transform the Jewish people and repair the Jewish world and stand up for Israel and bring unity and make things better. And what Aish specializes in is reaching Jews that others are not and doing it at a scale that others are not. Then why wouldn't we want them getting dollars to use it in that way? It's not a matter of, building the next Aish building or raising everybody's payroll in Aish. It's a matter of reaching more Jews, inspiring more Jews, and more connection to Israel. So, I think people looking at this election somewhat cynically have been looking at some of the new slates in particular, but all the slates are saying, this group's in it for them, this group's in it for them, this group's in it for them. And the answer is yes, but each one is in it for them because what they think they uniquely bring, or not uniquely, but what they focus on bringing for the betterment of the Jewish people, and that's good. We need them all. We want everyone to get a lot of votes, everyone to win, and then this whole group to form a coalition together and say, we care about Torah, we care about Israel, maybe we lean a little center-right on politics about Israel. Now let's figure out what we each specialize in and do it together. So are you seeing some collaboration here, even as each slate is fighting for themselves to get people to register and vote? Is there a spirit of collaboration? Is there opportunity for collaboration?
It's a good question. Look, I'll just tell you that number one is Aish has the worst business model on the face of the planet because a lot of our students do not pay tuition for Bali Tshuva and they don't have money, and we raise the money and we support them. The same thing for online. Our goal is unaffiliated Jews. We go after Jews, and so in terms of us being able to use the money for ourselves like that, it doesn't really work so much for us. It might for other people. In terms of collaboration, look, I think in the future there's room for collaboration. There've been some things that I think have been problematic, and I'm just being very frank and open and honest. We actually produced a documentary, which I'm very, very passionate about, and our documentary covers Harvard, Columbia, and UCLA through the eyes of our students, and we've been doing premieres really across the country, and frankly, by and large, we've been doing them in JCCs, we've been doing them in theaters and other places, because a lot of the synagogues don't feel comfortable hosting our documentary, right? Because of the elections. So like, well, I'm with this one, I'm with that one. And that's frankly been disappointing. It's been disappointing to our students. And I've had to explain to them like, well, like I understand. And I personally don't really get it, but I've made them feel better about it. The fact that so many synagogues, they have some kind of historic connection and therefore they don't want to be, caught in this in between. So that's been disappointing. But like for the Aish Ha'am, we just stay focused on what we have to do, bring the votes down for the Jewish youth, for the Jewish future. And in the end, certainly there'll be a coalition. This is a parliamentary type of election. We'll all be able to come together. But I wish I could say that it's been just a great experience. I have seen some pettiness, and I think that, if Mashiach's going to come, we're going to have to try and kind of reverse that a little bit.
Yeah, this is our opportunity to work on it. It's actually, as you say that, I'm thinking it's our opportunity. Sometimes as spectator to the Israeli political system, Americans or those outside of Israel could have something to say about how much better they should be. Well, this is our chance because this system is really modeled after and emulates and works off the same system. And now this is our chance to practice what we're preaching or want to see in others and just set aside those differences. Maybe this is typical BRS fashion or sort of my perspective and philosophy and approach to life, but I just see it as not being partisan or territorial or seeing it as competitive for a particular slate. It's terribly disappointing to me to hear that a shul would not show a documentary that's critical in our time and show the students in it the support they deserve, because somehow that could impact an election, which frankly, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not going to say it now because I'm running the risk of leaving somebody out, but if the people in our shul vote for anyone in this, or this, I'm happy, right? It's don't vote for them. Don't vote for that. Don't vote for the people whose interests are not aligned, who might corrupt or compromise what we believe is best, what our sacred Torah holds dear. But any of these groups who essentially are aligned, who we share so much in common, and we can diversify who we're investing in, which I think is also very valuable. The broader a coalition, the stronger it'll be, the more of an impact it'll have in those conversations at the table. We only gain from, and also our shuls are made up. I know I'm supposed to be, interviewing you, but our shuls are made up of diversity. So if we're in only this party shul, well, the people that don't connect to that, they're just going to sit out this election. And if the real goal is getting 100% participation in registering and voting, because that's what's going to make a difference, then let's offer the shmorg of, whichever nuanced one of these you like, take it for yourself. But this is sort of the buffet that we think is good to choose from. And absolutely, each one should have an opportunity, which is why I'm having these conversations, and I think they're important. How are you seeing it going so far? The influencers, I know we're only barely into this. It goes till May 4th. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And I feel like I'm exhausted after 24 hours of emails and texts and posts. And I don't know how we're going to make it till May 4th of this. But how is Aish Ha'am doing in its initial entering into the landscape?
We're doing great. And I think one of the things that we've enjoyed, again, is that because we work with influencers, because we have so much online, we're dealing with a massive Jewish population out there. And so, like I said, the fact that shuls have been kind of partisan is not really affecting us so much, because our strategy is really, as it's always been, is to reach out to many of the unaffiliated, many of the Jews that are not connected out there, working with many of the young people in terms of the collegiates and stuff like that. So the way I view this is Aish Ha'am has really become our movement. And this is something that's going to well outlast this election, that we are really getting people to, our three values are take responsibility for the Jewish people, Jewish wisdom, that everyone's got to have a part in that. And everything we do is based on love. Like, those are our three values. That's how we conduct ourselves. That's how we're running this campaign. It's been phenomenally successful. I'm so proud, and I've said this so many times, for my influencers. I'm looking at these influencers who, like I said, October 6th, were just about fashion. We're just about like all these different things that were going to bring them followers. And they found something substantive to be involved in, is the fight for the Jewish people. And the same thing on university campus. These are kids that were just going to go out and they were going to get a good degree at an Ivy League school, and they were going to go out and get a great job, make money, and do whatever they're going to do. Next thing you know, they're literally in the trenches fighting for the Jewish people. So every second that I spend with these very special souls is just fantastic. And thank God the election for us is just been a labor of love.
These influencers in particular, people watching who are spectators to them say, yeah, of course, what they're standing for is obvious to all of us. And they get a lot of attention. Look at all the follows they get. They don't know the sacrifices they've made. Absolutely. Like you said, many of them money, sponsors, relationships being spoken of negatively, and they've paid a price for it in many cases. And if they were building a career as an influencer, which is a topic for another time, but if they were doing that, this was a bad decision for them. So for anyone who's watching who thinks this is an obvious choice for them and how lucky they are, they get to do it. In some ways they are fortunate. It's a privilege, but it's not obvious at all. And to the degree they have managers or people who are trying to influence them, they probably would have counseled them out of it, and therefore they are deserving our support for the price that they're paying. I'll ask you one last question, Rabbi Burg, and not to be controversial, but to be direct and put it out there. So Aish Ha'am, new slate, new platform. Not all the Torah leadership of Aish Let me put it this way. How would you explain if there were Torah leadership of Aish who was encouraging voting for a different slate or a different party, or was it automatically saying Aish is the obvious choice?
Look, I don't have a problem with that, but we're very, very eclectic. And like I said, if people want to vote, whichever way to vote, I mean, that's the definition of democracy, is people have a decision, in terms of what we've been able to build here. This is all about our values. This is literally, it's filled with our values. Berkowitz is the Rosh Shiva, so he is, he's on board 1,000%. Our students, our alumni, everyone's just totally invigorated by this. I mean, everyone's really, really excited. So we really haven't had that issue. Someone wants to vote for someone else, I guess it's okay. As long as they're doing it for the right reasons and not, some of the slates are frankly bribing people, just offering them money, like literally cash. And that, I mean, even I, who I'm very, very open, it kind of bothers me a little bit.
Right.
When people are just kind of buying votes. That's something that I think they used to do in the old days in Chicago. I think modern day democracy tries not to do that.
Right.
So if people are doing it because they really believe in a certain cause and a belief and they're passionate about it, then I think it's awesome. I think you should go with it. If you're doing it because you wind up in some raffle or someone's paying you money to round up votes or your own vote, that I don't think that's quite Torah hashkafa.
Got it. Rabbi Burg, thank you. And like I said, look forward to speaking a lot more about a lot of other topics, exciting, and appreciate your coming on and sharing a little bit about Aish Ha'am, and wish a lot of hatzlacha. And certainly knowing you is enough for me to know, but also knowing Aish and the incredible work it does. I think it's a fantastic choice of a slate. And I know that the seats that you'll have around that table will only make the outcome of any conversation much better. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm your biggest fan, whether it be online or in BRS. I think the things you do for the Jewish people are just absolutely terrific.
Thank you. Okay, we are glad to be with Mort Klein, our longtime friend. Mort, great to see you again. And as always, thank you for what you're doing for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel and fighting in the front lines and an unabashed spokesperson. And thank you for all that you do. And we're honored to have had you previously, not only in our show many times, but on Behind the Bima. Today's conversation specifically is about the World Zionist Congress and the election that is sweeping the Jewish world by storm with many slates, coalitions, potential partnerships. And I'm simply trying to educate myself and others about the different groups and the slates and what they stand for, what they're advocating for. This is an enormous amount of money at stake, billions of dollars. Over $1 billion a year each year, and it's can really make a difference in influencing policy. So first of all, thank you for being here, and tell us a little bit about the ZOA slate and what it stands for, how it's different from some of the other slates, and why you think everyone should register and vote for ZOA.
Well, our slate consists of 30 other ardent, fervent Zionist organizations, from lawfare to students supporting Israel, to American Friends of Judea and Samaria, and many, many others. We are the strongest Zionist right of center group that's running. We have successfully been fighting BDS, for example, and we'll continue to. We're the only organization that got a resolution passed in last year's World Zionist Congress that you're not, no organization is permitted to support, to say they oppose BDS, even though they support it with companies that are working in Judea and Samaria. That is also boycotting Israel. There's 800,000 Jews living past the 67 line, 500,000 or 600,000 in Judea and Samaria directly, another several hundred thousand in Eastern Europe. So we have been successfully, against all odds, been able to get such resolutions passed that we don't support boycotting Jews anywhere in the land of Israel. We're the only major organization that fights for and opposes the establishment of a Palestinian state. Let me tell you, the foreign minister Gidon Sar, my goodness gracious, I've only known him for 25 years. It proves that I'm past 40. Gidon Sar spoke to us in Israel, to the organizations, a few weeks ago. He begged us, please publicly oppose a Palestinian state to reduce pressure on us. We have pressure to establish a state, to give land away. Do you know that ZOA is the only major organization publicly opposing it? I went to other groups in that meeting, Orthodox and others, and they say it's too controversial. We're not going to publicly oppose the state. We fight against it. This would be a disaster for Israel. We saw what happened in a mini state in Gaza, and what a disaster, monstrous disaster it was. Imagine giving them more land and more power to do their monstrous deeds against Jews. We are the only organization to publicly support the right of Jews to live in Judea and Samaria and build in Judea and Samaria. And we are the only ones who support sovereignty, that we support Israel declaring sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, over the Jordan Valley and other areas of the land of Israel. We've also gotten resolutions passed that no one is permitted to use the word West Bank. This is a term that de-Judaizes Jews in Judea and Samaria. Only the word should be used is Judea and Samaria. We helped get Brian Mast, the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, to give an order. No one at House Foreign Relations in the federal government can use the term West Bank, only Judea and Samaria. And Senator Cotton from Arkansas has introduced legislation in the Senate with respect to that. No one else promotes that. We're the only organization that supports Donald Trump's Gaza plan to remove the Arabs from Gaza and rebuild Gaza of an area which there will not be hostile and dangerous for Israel, for Jews. These Arabs in Gaza, they have nothing to come back to. The lands are destroyed, the areas destroyed, the houses are destroyed, there's no facilities. This is the perfect time for that to happen. We are the only organization supporting Donald Trump's plan, even though the government of Israel supports it, the Knesset of Israel supports it, the people of Israel supports it.
So let me just interrupt you for 1 second more, because these are all important positions of the ZOA, and personally, I'm grateful for them. But connecting it back to the World Zionist Congress, right? So if people vote for your slate, for the ZOA slate, your presence at the table and participation will be able to direct more funds towards these goals, towards these policies. Yes. So bring it back to the World Zionist Congress and why the ZOA having more
said is about the World Zionist Congress. We'll be at the table with more. If we have more votes, we'll have more people at the table promoting these important policy issues to support and promote the government, promoting the issues that I've just mentioned. This is World Zionist Congress policies that we can help influence if we have more seats at the table. There's over $1 billion at stake. The more votes we get, the more people we can put in key agencies that will be able to direct the funds to promote the ZOA agenda, which of course is the Zionist agenda, which of course is the agenda that Hashem has for Eretz Yisrael. That's really our biggest supporter. And let me tell you, the Speaker of the Knesset, Amir Ohana, has publicly in a video endorsed ZOA, urging people vote only for ZOA. They're doing all the things that need to be done. The great Academy Award-winning actor John Voight has also put out a video urging people to vote for ZOA. That's the kind of influence we have. Even Bibi, in our fundraising letters, he has said, support ZOA, help them financially in every other way, even the Prime Minister of Israel. And it's really, and the tide is turning, because people used to think about ZOA that we're too strong, too right of center. Michael Oren, at meetings 2 weeks ago in Israel, of all the heads of the Jewish organizations, in a meeting 2 weeks ago, Friday night, made a speech. This is a guy who was a labor guy. He made a speech, and after the speech, I raised my hand to ask a question. He said, Mort, he called on me first. Mort, before you ask your question, I have to admit something. I admit, Mort, you and ZOA have been right about everything. That's an exact quote. You and ZOA have been right about everything.
Even your wife hasn't said that.
Pardon me?
I said even your wife hasn't said that.
I'm working on that, but it's much tougher with my wife. And he said, Mort, I have become closer and closer to the viewpoint that you've had all these years, and you've been right. And I said, Michael, as soon as you get to exactly my viewpoint, you will also be right all the time. So, I may have mentioned, Gideon Sar. Did I mention that?
The Gideon Sar also.
I did mention that.
So tell me more. I mean, there's several slates, obviously, and it's a big election. And there are those you wish that every single vote went to the ZOA. Certainly, you wish ZOA was in charge of all the $1 billion a year and direct it.
No. One third a little more than a third of the people who are comprised this by the World Zionist Congress are from Israel.
Right.
1/3 are from Europe and the rest of the world. Only about 1/3 are from America. So even if we get every vote, we only
You'll
have
only
a
be a
third.
third. Got it. Got it. But do you recognize that there are other coalition partners, that the likelihood is that, please God, your slate will get a lot of votes and you'll have a lot of the candidates who will be in and have seats, but a coalition will have to be formed. So one of the things I'm trying to do in putting out these conversations with some of the slates is essentially to say to the people listening, I don't appear on any slate in particular, and I'm not out working on particular for a slate. I'm out there saying, don't vote for the wrong slate. Here's a sort of schmorg of some slates who, while they disagree about some important issues, but also align and overlap on the ones probably the most important, and be they religious or political, but really can work together. And so, the biggest, I think, opponent that we face is apathy, is the fact that the majority of Jews don't vote, don't register in this, don't spend a few dollars to have a say on $1 billion. And if we could wake people up and encourage them, register and vote, and whether they vote ZOA or they vote for some of the others that are different but can be aligned and can form a coalition. And that's really what I'm advocating and trying to push, is say, an army is made up of different units. ZOA is a critical unit in the pro-Israel Jewish people army. There are other units too. If one of those other units appeal to you, be part of those who are really fighting in the army of Hashem, and the army of Torah, and the army of strengthening and protecting the Jewish people in Israel. And so, of course, you would encourage everyone to vote the ZOA, but I think it's important to recognize that there are other partners that you probably could align with and form a coalition around.
But there are a number of slates that are running, that are promoting establishing a Palestinian state, which will clearly be run by Hamas and Abbas monsters who are running, who are saying Jews should not be living or building in Judea and Samaria. There shouldn't be sovereignty there. No, there are many slates that are detrimental to Jewish people.
Absolutely.
Just like they're not a slate, just like J Street is an anti-Israel, really even anti-Semitic organization that harms Israel in every way. They just came out defending Mahmoud Khalil, who was just arrested to deport for his promoting Hamas. Remember, Hamas's charter calls for the murder of every Jew, Article 7, destruction of Israel, Article 13. And so you have slates who are defending him. In fact, the head of the JCPA, Jewish Council of Public Affairs, Amy Spitalnik, has condemned ICE for arresting this terrible Hamas-loving, really terrorist. So there are slates that are very problematic. And no, I don't want people to vote for them. They should get no votes.
Oh, no, I agree with you. That's my point, though, is that let's direct them towards at least some options of slate that are right of center. And let's make sure that the money and the influence doesn't go into the hands of those who are detrimental. So this wasn't a pluralism, all slates, vote for everybody. My point was, let's identify and encourage from a range of, because while you wish everyone voted ZOA, the likelihood is not everyone will. So let them at least vote for, let's direct them towards other options that we can rally around together.
Look, obviously, this is a democracy. There is a poll tax, as you mentioned. We have a poll tax of $5 that's simply to cover the cost of running all of this. So people can vote for whoever they wish, of course. But I certainly hope people understand that there are quite a few slates that are promoting an agenda that will hurt Israel in a very serious way. I think because of the positions we've taken, a few years ago, when there were the WZI, World Zionist Organization meetings in Basel, Switzerland, I was asked to come to a certain meeting. There's quite a large group who come to all these meetings. And Miri Adelson got up to the podium, asked me to come up to the podium. And ZOA was the only organization given an award for the great Zionist work we do. Miri Adelson gave me that award, along with the head of the World Zionist Organization, Yaakov Hagoel. In fact, the World Likud has only endorsed one organization, ZOA Slate. That's it. So we are really unique in being proud, courageous, effective, strong Jews who fight for what's right, no matter what the consequences are of the left or of the media. So I continue to urge everyone, of course, to go to our website, zoa.org, go to zionistcoalition.org and vote. Most Jews never even heard of this election, of course.
Right.
It's only a small fraction of Jews that ever heard of it. And as soon as they hear about $5, that becomes troublesome. Now, $5 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks, that's not a problem. But to vote in an important election, that becomes a problem.
And if you tell people for $5, you could have an impact on deciding $1 billion.
Yes.
It's a tiny price to pay. The return on that money is enormous and extraordinary. So, Mort, thank you for all the work that you do and ZOA does and what they stand up for and that they represent. And we're living in extraordinary times. Who would think that the administration of the President of the United States of America would pass you on the right and maybe even seem further? And I say that only half jokingly, but to think that Israel is aligned and this administration is aligned, ZOA is aligned, and now it's just a question of how to execute some of these plans and decisions and ideas.
Remember, Rabbi Goldberg, truth is not a political position. It is not right-wing to say we oppose a state. It would be a disaster for the people. It isn't right-wing to say Jews have a right to live in Judea and Samaria. You mean we can live in Miami or Detroit, but not in Judea and Samaria? I mean, Arabs can live in Eretz Israel, but Jews can't live in Judea and Samaria? This is not right-wing. It is simply the truth. But Rabbi Goldberg, I also have to commend you for the holy work you do in promoting Torah and Yiddishkeit and Eretz Israel, because the closer Jews are to Torah, the closer they are to the positions that the ZOA promotes. And that's been shown in every poll. The closer they are to traditional Judaism, the more they agree with the types of views we promote. And I'll tell you, only in the last few weeks, it has become clear that there is a God in heaven. 200 missiles came from Iran. This is a few months ago. 200 missiles came from Iran. Not a single Jew was killed. How is that possible? 200 missiles, not a single Jew was killed. And a week ago, there were bombs put on a number of buses and trains in Israel, and hundreds of Jews would have been murdered. And what happened? The guy put that they should go off at 9 p.m. by accident instead of 9 a.m. during high traffic. And so hundreds of Jews' lives were saved. This is a miracle from God. The more I see of what's going on in the world, especially with respect to Israel, it makes me stronger and stronger in my belief in Hashem. What Israel's done to Hamas, to Hezbollah, Iran, now they've destroyed their anti-aircraft facilities. Who could have believed that they could have achieved this? They achieved this with the help of God Almighty.
No question. We're living through revealed miracles, not to mention the beeper episode and so many others that nobody would have believed, nobody could have predicted, nobody ever would even write a script that would tell that story. It would be too unrealistic or unbelievable. We're absolutely living in miraculous times, and we should merit to continue to live in them.
It is clear we must keep Shabbos, keep Kashrut, lay tefillin, daven, and do what God asks of us. And He asks us to do these things for our benefit. This is good for our lives. In addition, He is pleased also, I'm sure, if we do these things. So He gets nachas as well. But this is really best for our people. He knows what's good for us, and that's why He's given us these suggestions of how we should live.
Well, Mort, I couldn't agree more, certainly with that statement. And again, thank you for all of your work and the ZOA's work. And we should merit to see these policies implemented, fulfilled to the safety of all of Israel and our soldiers and the hostages coming home. And please, God, to celebrate only good things. Thank you for all that you do.
Amen. Yashikach. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm honored and excited to be joined by my dear friend, Dan Kaskel. Full transparency, Dan Kaskel is not only my dear friend for a long time, he's also my boss as the president of the Boca Raton Synagogue. But we are not having this conversation in that capacity, although that'd be an interesting one, Dan. But we're here to talk about the WZO elections, the World Zionist Congress, 39th Congress, which, as we've explained, influences the flow of an enormous amount of money, and money influences policies and decisions. And Dan, you are the number one on the Herut slate, and
yes,
a big advocate of Herut.
I appreciate that. I want to make one point of clarification, though. Rabbi Goldberg has one boss, and that's Rabbi Goldberg.
You know what? That's for sure. That is a correct clarification, and I appreciate that. So Herut is slate number 23. This election is underway, and again, we've been encouraging everybody, sign up, vote, make your voice heard, and influence where this money goes in Israel to both the religious values and the political values that you have. Don't sit it out, and for the little amount of money it costs, don't be a spectator to the destiny of the Jewish people. So why Herut, Dan? How did you get involved in Herut? How long have you been involved in Herut? And what would you tell people about why the Herut slate should get their vote?
Well, thank you. And thank you for having us on and giving Herut some time. I appreciate that. I look forward to hearing to the other slates also. And we're all part of a right-wing coalition. And I don't mean right-wing, hard right, but We all work together, and I like Herut, and I was asked to join Herut 7 or so years ago by our executive director, Karma Feinstein Cohen, who asked me to join Herut. I was on the 38th World Zionist Congress slate for Herut, as were a few other members of our community. And after that election, I was asked if 5 years from now I would lead the slate, and I kept my word, and I'm now leading the slate. Herut's wonderful because, number one, it's a Jabotinsky movement, and if you study a little bit of history, Jabotinsky was a phenomenal Zionist and had some great ideas. And today, many different politicians from all parties find their political roots in the Jabotinsky Zionism. Herut was originally formed by Menachem Begin. His first party was Herut. He folded it into Likud. In the early 90s, his son Benny Begin left Likud, and he formed Herut with a few other members of Knesset. And they also formed the Zionist Party that's been around since then, since the early 90s. And Herut is in about 12 countries now, a big presence in America and Israel and the UK and Canada and South America, and it just, doing great things. What I like about Herut is that while it's non-denominational, it almost always votes with religious Zionist parties, which is wonderful, but it has the flexibility to do a little bit more than maybe some religious Zionist parties won't do. We have probably more Jews of color on our slate than any other. In fact, we do have more Jews of color in our slate than any other slate that I'm aware of. We have some Jews that are religious, like me. I go to the Boca Raton synagogue. We have some Jews that are completely non-observant or not yet observant, but believe and respect tremendously Jewish and traditional Jewish values and religious values. And it gives us a lot of freedom and flexibility to go above and beyond what some of the purely religious slates do.
That's a very interesting point. So meaning it leans or aligns with a lot of the religious values, but it's not a formally religious group. So it enables diversity of people who share politics, and therefore might be able to advocate things that you don't have to be as restricted if you were a purely religious group. So what are some of the things that Herut stands for, or if you had the opportunity to direct some of these funds to particular projects, agencies, causes, policies, where would you, as the number one candidate on the Herut slate, where want to see this money go?
Sure. So this year, and I don't think by any means Herut's alone, originally World Zionist Congress was made to help form a homeland in Palestine. So that's been done. So you wonder, why are these organizations still around since 1948 when we do have a state? There's many great reasons why these organizations, World Zionist Organization, Karen Kayemet, the Jewish Agency, while they're still around, and they still do great things. And as you mentioned before, Rabbi, there is $1 billion plus a year budget that gets allocated once every 5 years at the Zionist Congress. What this year, anti-Semitism in America, this is an American election now, to send 152 Americans to the World Zionist Congress in October of 2025. Everyone is speaking, and they should. Anti-Semitism on our campuses, around, everywhere in America is a huge issue, and that should be one of the top things on our list where funds should be allocated for. And just granularly, how do they do that? They send like the same way Chabad sends their shluchim all around the world. World Zionist Organization also sends shluchim, although I'm told I keep on pronouncing that not in the Hebrew way, but in the Yiddish way. Shluchim. They will send their people out to help with whatever the allocation of funds is for, and helping combat anti-Semitism, putting more people on campuses to empower students to do this. And I think we are not alone by any means in suggesting this. And this should be a top priority. Enhancing and infrastructure in Judea and Samaria and where else needed in Israel. Again, something we can all get behind. We also think that post October 7th, the needs in Israel have grown also. The psychological needs, like are there the resources that they need, that the Israelis need, IDF and non-IDF soldiers to come to deal with the emotional issues that will be with them for many years to come. That needs to be dealt with. And that's a good source at a good allocation of funds. Even things, again, Aliyah, most people should be in favor of Aliyah. We all, when we registered to vote, when we registered to be candidates, we signed that we approve of the Jerusalem program, which among other things promotes Aliyah, promotes Jewish unity. But one thing I did want to mention is Herut was successful in February of getting the Jerusalem program amended to include, as part of the Jerusalem program, which everyone signs on for, supporting the IDF and doing what we can as a Jewish people to recognize the IDF as the protectors of Zion, of Eretz Israel. And if you can't be in the IDF by law, then to do national service. And that was a change to the Jerusalem program, to the constitution of the WZO that Herut advanced, and it was approved. I'm not sure why ZOA voted against it, and some slates did, but otherwise it was approved, and now it's part of the Jerusalem program. So I'm really proud of that. That may be among the issues that some, I don't know, maybe some religious or more Haredi groups can't advance or support, but we have the flexibility to advance such a proposal. Learning Hebrew. If I want to learn Torah, Rabbi, 24/6, I think I can go online. I think I can learn from your courses that are online. I can listen for a year without break, and I think there'd still be things that I haven't gotten to. So I can learn Torah, but can I learn Hebrew? And I've tried many times. I think that some of the funds and it's part of the Jerusalem program. It's our language. It's a part of our heritage. Why shouldn't every Jew be speaking Hebrew? So that's something to consider. But we have big issues to address, and I would also love to see some specific counter anti-Semitism efforts directed towards the UN. And why can't we focus on that a little bit also and allocate some funding towards that? Because it's such a hotbed of anti-Semitism. So those are among the things that we've been talking about and we'd like to promote at the World Zionist Congress.
Yeah, those are fantastic. And I think, like you said, most all of us can rally around them. One of the things I'm trying to accomplish in these conversations is to encourage people to not necessarily be so partisan in their particular party and slate, but to realize, as I've come to understand and learn, and I have a lot more to learn still in this area, there's some competing interests in the World Zionist Congress. And it's about voting for the party that speaks to you, but also those that align, and that coalitions can be formed, because there are a lot of influences trying to direct these monies to things that are not. We love all Jews, and we practice and believe and love Jewish unity. So it's not about creating tension or conflict, but there are competing interests, and some people want to see money go towards places that we feel can compromise or corrupt our Torah Jewish values, or can endanger our people from our political views. And so creating coalitions. So would you agree to that? That of course you're here to advocate for Herut, and you're number one on that slate, and you've successfully recruited a lot of people in our community to be on the slate together with you. But it's about Herut, but it's also about a broader coalition, and at least, if not voting for Herut, voting for the bigger coalition and not the other coalition. Is that a fair statement?
100%. And by way of example, if someone was more Haredi and wanted to be on a slate, we've worked many times. I met with Rabbi Lerner a few months ago in Far Rockaway, and he offered. And if someone did come to Herut, a little more religious than me, maybe kept kosher. No, I'm only kidding, Rabbi. But identified more with a Haredi slate, we would suggest that they contact Rabbi Lerner. Likewise, they have sent members to Herut because they align more. But at the end of the day, almost universally, we're voting together. It's a Jew of color may feel more comfortable in Herut. A non-observant Jew may feel more comfortable, but totally otherwise aligned fundamentally, philosophically, with both a religious slate and a slate like Herut. And we do need to work together. And and there are many things where across the board Jews will agree. I mean, I know it's hard to believe, but there are some issues we will agree. And to the extent that it's more of a fundamental issue than the more right of center. When I say right wing, it's not, we may have people on the Herut slate that were former Meir Kahane followers and people that may have really loved a more left of center figure, but we come together with the purpose of accomplishing and finding that unity that is so important. And I think that's also part of World Zionist Congress, 525 Jews all together, figuring things out, working things out. No one goes home empty-handed. Everyone gets something. But hopefully the nationalist camp, those slates that identify and we see things philosophically and we're philosophically aligned, will have a majority. And I think we will, as we did 5 years ago.
So I think that's a good place to leave it, which is encouraging people to get out, register, vote. Like I said, don't be a spectator, don't be passive, don't put your destiny in other people's hands, don't complain and kvetch about policies or developments that you're frustrated by when you could have made a difference. And which slate or party in particular is important, but less important than being supportive of a coalition. And I hope that both in the conversations that we're having in this episode and broader than just these conversations, people can be not only partisan about the particular slate, but also be focused on the broader coalition and supportive and encouraging and experiencing that unity to ensure that the coalition and its interests, both religious, political, can advance. So Dan, thank you for your work.
Thank you, Rabbi, but you should know that
to me in your commitment to Israel, your Zionism that you always bring into our community. And this is an example of it as a pure volunteer. You're not an employee of Herut or of the World Zionist Congress or of this slate. It's just purely from your heart and with love. And that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you, Rabbi. And keep in mind, I think your grandparents would be proud of you if you vote Herut, the Jabotinsky movement, slate 23.
Well, we'll definitely keep that in mind. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you, Rabbi. Always a pleasure.